July 31st is supposed to be D-Day for the CFL to make an announcement, to make a decision on whether or not there's going to be a season, whether there could be a season. At the time we're taping this, we don't know what that decision is going to be yet, but what could be at stake for the league, depending on which way they go. Let's dive down that rabbit hole. Two very different options, Steve Milton, that could come here. The CFL could announce they can't do a season, or they could announce they're going to try and push through with a bubble hub format like we've seen in the NBA and NHL, and do it in Winnipeg with a reduced schedule. What is at stake for the league with either of those decisions?
Well, I think, and again, you correctly emphasized that as we tape this, we don't really know because it's before their actual deadline, a few hours before. I don't think they will enforce that deadline. I think that's a little softer deadline than people think. But the fact that they made one tells you how urgency and what is at stake here. And a lot of people would say the entire survival of the CFL. I wouldn't go quite that far. And I think part of the reason is that they have been engaging, at least in the public now, for some time. So the CFL has been at least kept, there has been some presence. It's not like they just canceled the whole thing. We can't do it all. We can't get the money, and disappeared 2 months ago. That, I think, is eventually what will happen. But they'll at least have got some kind of, I don't think momentum. And it's not positive by any means because of the bickering in public. But I think it's at stake here. I don't think the entire future of the CFL is at stake, but I think the strength of the league is very much at stake.
Rick?
I think the perception from society is that the CFL and the Players Association, both in their own right, kind of fumbled the ball sometime around the line, and they just couldn't get a deal done. The fact of the matter is that this league needs millions upon millions of government dollars to make a go of it, and they're just not going to get that. And at the end of the day, financially, this is going to be a huge impact on the owners, the community-owned teams. But I don't think the league is going away. I don't think this is the death knell of the Canadian Football League. There's been many trials and tribulations over the years. This is another speed bump in the road. You can look at the American Hockey League and the OHL and the other Canadian junior hockey leagues. They all canceled their seasons. They'll all be back next year. The CFL will be back next year. Players will return. But the relationship between the league and the PA is again in dire straits, and they have to repair that.
Bubs?
The relationship between the Canadian Football League and its fans, I would describe it as a complete mess at this point. We've all four of us love this league. All four of us love covering this league. But we all four of us have friends that say the Canadian Football League are a joke. And all four of us are fighting hard to argue against those people. But right now, this league looks like a joke. Because, Steve, as you were saying, if this is yet another soft deadline, make that 3 days now. Last Thursday was supposed to be, as announced by TSN, a deadline by Dave Naylor. Then it got exchanged to the next day, as in Friday. And if a decision doesn't come from at least Randy Ambrosie today, and I'm not talking about some type of statement, I'm talking about facing the public, going on TSN or CFL.ca and telling us exactly what's going on. Those friends of ours that say the league are a joke, in my opinion, are correct.
I think Randy Ambrosie definitely has to say something today, whether they affirm the deadline. If he comes forward and says, because look, we've all agreed public money, tax money is essential for this. He's made that very clear. If he comes forward and says, we're in negotiations, we think we may be close to being able to make this work, we have to extend it because, that's something. But if they just sort of, as Bubba says, just say, nothing today, it's just not a great look. It doesn't look like there's a lot of control at the top. But even beyond that, I'm with you, Steve. I agree 100% that the statements that have been made in the past number of months that if there's not a league, this league is dead, those kind of it's such hyperbole. There's no reason to believe that would be the case, that missing a year would kill the league. It wouldn't help, but it's not going to kill a league.
Well, one wouldn't think, except that I mean, to argue against myself here briefly, the financing of this league has always been, right on the bubble, and a lot of people don't give, I think, some of the owners enough credit for how they've managed this, or what they have actually done, what they put into it. I mean, Hamilton Tiger Cats, just like the Bulldogs, I don't know another place that has two owners like Michael Andelauer and Bob Young. I mean, we're very fortunate in Hamilton. Throwing money after lost money. Bob's now breaking even, but only on operations, not on cost of money and all those kinds of things, and maybe making a little money. But how long can that go on? Remembering that that the people that put money into this league also have other businesses that have been suffering, right? All of their other businesses have been suffering through these pandemics. So there is that. It's not, money is the biggest issue here and always has been. It's one of the beauty of the CFL. It's, I think, one of the reasons we all like it. I think Bubba's right. The perception right now of the league is totally destroyed in terms of a positive sense. A lot of fans are cheering for it, but they don't like what's being done. That said, I think that part of it can go away at some point. They have to show some kind of unity today. There's too many irons in the fire. Players, the league, and mostly the various levels of government. There's too many irons in the fire there right now. So at least the players in the league, even if they don't feel that way, have to say, even if they cancel it, at some point they cancel the season, at some point they say, we're going to use this time now to do what's best for the league, even though they hate each other at the moment.
Rick, let me ask you a quick question on this one, because even if the league announces that it's coming back and they're doing the 6-game tournament or 6-game season in the bubble, I still have great doubts about how many American players are going to come up here, because you're going to get a third of your pay, which isn't much to begin with, and now you're going to risk your health for $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 after taxes. I'm not sure how many of them are going to do that. Does the league run a risk that even if it comes back, it hurts its product?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're seeing that already in the National Football League. Laurent Duvernay-Tardif, being the first pro football player of the Kansas City Chiefs, we know that he's a doctor and has been working during the COVID-19 pandemic, said, listen, I have bigger priorities right now. There's a bigger issue that I have to deal with, and that's not football. And he opted out of the National Football League, especially after signing, a new contract and getting millions upon millions of dollars. He sees a greater need. And without a doubt, the Canadian Football League and a lot of the American players could say that, listen, in a regular season, I would earn $90,000. In a third of a season, that's 30. After taxes and with the conversion rates, you're looking at 20 some odd thousand. Is it worth putting my body and putting my health at risk for 20 grand for a couple of months for up to 9 games if you're going to go all the way to the Grey Cup? A lot of those players are going to say, no, it's just not worth it.
A lot will, exactly. Lots I've talked to won't. Players near the end of their careers, some will, some won't. It's going to be a very, very individual basis. It's going to be how much you trust by then. Not so much the league, but your individual team to keep you safe. I think on Hamilton, there's a fair amount of trust there, but I'm not sure it's just this, Scott, that it's just going to be limited to American players.
Fair enough.
Canadian players, have been a few of them, just a few. But the other thing, the thing we have to remember about some American players, especially young ones, they need tape. They all want to play it. The younger ones need tape. Because there's going to be mini camps in the spring probably, depending on how the NFL goes this year, for them to get to the NFL. So this tape is game tape is very, very important to them, especially heading into a year. So you're going to see some players play strictly for the tape. But Canadian players, some of them have had made plans already. I mean, they have off-season jobs, and maybe I know a few, but I don't know how many of them are locked into these jobs that have extended those jobs into this period of time when they normally wouldn't go. And that's starting to make them think, do I want to put this on hold? Especially with school coming back and uncertainties of school, which we were talking about off air. Do you necessarily want to leave your children alone with one spouse?
And we should focus on the Canadian players in this league, because this is the Canadian Football League. Each team has to start 7 Canadians on their roster. So if a bunch of Canadians opt out, we're not necessarily talking about the integrity of the game, but we might be looking at the value or the talent on the field compared to some of the guys that have opted out. So if a bunch of Canadians say, we're just not interested, that's going to really affect what the product is on the field.
But guys, let's not forget the safety aspect, which I think is really the most important thing here, right? I've heard these stories out of Manitoba very much out as you guys have, and we don't know because the CFL hasn't really said anything. Randy Ambrosie has not really confirmed anything, but we're hearing that American players must quarantine for 14 days in their wherever they live. Do you really believe that's going to happen with all the players, all the American players? Do you truly believe they will self-quarantine for 14 days and then 7 days, a minimum of 7 days when they get into Manitoba? I don't buy it. To me, the thing just it's set up for failure. And we're already seeing it in Major League Baseball where players are testing positive, as many as 18, 19 members of the Miami Marlins. But the model of Major League Baseball, even though it's flawed, they are able to continue because they financially can afford it. This league, if players or teams start to have to drop out because of this illness, this pandemic, what does the CFL do? Can they actually afford this? I don't think so. So to me, this whole stretching out and delays and waiting on what's going to happen to me is a kind of a bit of a sham, because even with the $42.5 million the league could get from the federal government, this league still can't afford to continue under the way they want to do this with this hub city format.
And if it's a loan, and Bubba, if it's a loan, and we've been hearing about a loan now more than a gift as a possibility. If it's a loan and you end up in the situation where you start the season and suddenly there's an outbreak and you now have to cancel the season, I suppose you could turn around and give some of that money back. But if you've already paid, I mean, the CFL now is in a real pickle because now you've got no season and you've got to pay this back. I mean, I look at this case. We start by saying, what's at stake here? It looks like, honestly, the CFL is damned if it does and damned if it doesn't. Quite honestly, like, it doesn't look like there's a good option for this league right now.
But even worse, they get $40 million from the federal government, and then the season doesn't go ahead or gets canceled halfway through, and then next year there isn't another season, and now you're in a deeper hole. This is a no-win situation.
The longer this goes, guys, I truly believe that the owners, and I'm not trying to knock them, but I truly believe the league and the owners knew this was not going to work, that they could not afford for a season to happen. They're stretching this out. And can you imagine if they do play this 6-game season, if you want to call it that, this shortened season? You're now up against the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, every golf majors. Like, where would the CFL slot itself in amongst all the trees in that situation? It's not like it had the momentum from June, July, August to still carry our attention. None of this is going to work. I'm sorry.
Well, it would work if the action is great. If the play is great, it'll find its home. Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that's exactly the point I was going to make. And if the Raptors and the Jays tank, and then all of a sudden, it's not that everybody's a basketball fan and if the Leafs go out in the first round, all of those things. I mean, people are still sports fans of those sports, but they're more specifically of those teams. It's certainly in our area, but I think you had to give this the college try. I think I really think you had to give this, and still do as much as you can, and use. Right now, it's exposed the negative parts of the CFL. The four of us have always known that about the flimsiness, not flimsiness, but of the very thin financial edge that they've always walked, which is one of the beauties of the CFL, is that it always managed to survive. Besides that, but it's also revealed that growing rift between the players. It's also within the players. It's changed. We've seen the way the players' union has changed over the last year. We've known about it, but now we've seen it even more. So it's exposed that at the moment. So, but what it has done is at least get it out there and get talks going. And I think that's what they've got to spend the time doing. I think to have shut it down, you would have just had and done it immediately. And by the way, there's not unanimity. Never has been. You've got to remember here, commissioners have very little power in the CFL compared to the other leagues where they can speak for the ownership, and ownership eventually through them is a monolith. That is not the case in this league. So there are different feelings.
But to
So
Steve's
it-
point, out of sight would have been out of mind, and that probably wouldn't have been great either. I'm not sure that any of us agree. We got to wrap. I'm not sure any of us agree that it's been handled wonderfully, but at least it's still been. If, what you can say is it's still been in the conversation and maybe beyond today. We don't know. As I say, we're taping this before a decision is made. What do you think is at stake? Good or bad? Play or not play? Our Twitter handles are on the screen. They have been. They will be again. Comment. Tell your friends about this. Get the discussion going. We'd love to hear from you. Also, subscribe down below. You can subscribe and get notifications of all of our videos when they come out here on Home Games. Thank you for watching. We will talk to you again soon.